Welcome to the Explainer. Hey, if you're a life insurance producer in New York, you know that compliance, well, it's everything. Today, we're going to break down the 3 regulations that you absolutely need to have dialed in: 74, 187, and 60.
So, let's just jump right in with a quick question, kind of a compliance checkup. Are you really up to speed on the rules that govern how you serve your clients in New York? Let's find out.
You know, before we dive into all the specifics, it's really important to get the why behind all this. These regulations, they aren't just hoops to jump through. They're all about protecting consumers, educating them, and at the end of the day, building trust through total transparency.
Okay, to make all this stick, let's use an analogy. For the rest of this explainer, I want you to think of yourself not as a salesperson, but as a financial architect. Seriously. You're not just selling a product, you are designing a critical, foundational piece of your client's entire financial future.
Every great architectural project starts with a blueprint, right? So that's where we'll start, with our first regulation, which is all about that first impression, the policy illustration. This is Regulation 74.
So what exactly is an illustration in this context? Well, it's that blueprint. It's the document that shows how a policy could perform over many years. And it especially focuses on those non-guaranteed elements. You know, things like potential dividends that aren't set in stone, but are absolutely crucial for your client to understand.
And, you've got a few different kinds of blueprints in your toolkit. The basic illustration is your standard proposal. A supplemental might give a different view. An in-force illustration is for a policy that's already up and running, and a self-supporting one, that's to show the policy's long-term strength.
So when you hand this blueprint to your client, what absolutely, positively has to be on it to meet the standards of Regulation 74? What are the non-negotiables?
Here they are. These are the must-haves for that blueprint. You need the obvious stuff, of course, like the insurer's info and your client's details. But you also have to include the generic name of the policy, the initial death benefit, and, super important, a clear disclosure of any non-guaranteed elements. You can't skip a single one.
Okay, so the client has seen the blueprint. Now the financial architect's most important job really begins, making sure that the design is a perfect fit, that it's suitable for their life. And this is where Regulation 187 comes into play.
Regulation 187 is all about doing your homework. As the architect, you have to understand what you're building with. You are required to gather all this critical information to get a crystal clear picture of their financial landscape and what they actually need this policy to do for them.
And it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. The amount of information you gather scales with how complex the design is. So for a simpler structure, like a term policy, you'll collect that core information. But for more complex building, one with cash value, you've got to dig deeper, gathering more details on things like liquidity needs, risk tolerance, and tax status.
Now this is a hugely important distinction in Regulation 187. The moment you shift gears from just taking an order to actually providing advice that's tailored to somebody's needs, and that includes just answering their questions, you have officially made a recommendation. And right then, all the rules of Reg 187 kick in.
Okay, so what happens when your brand new architectural design involves, renovating or totally replacing an existing structure? This gets us into the delicate world of policy replacement, and that's governed by our third key rule, Regulation 60.
So replacement isn't as simple as just swapping one policy for another. The state has a very specific definition, and it's all about protecting consumers from making a bad switch. It gets triggered anytime a new policy sale is connected to a big change in an old one.
And these are the specific actions that ring the Regulation 60 bell. If your new sale causes an old policy to be lapsed, surrendered, converted, reissued in a way that frees up cash, or used as collateral for a big loan, well then, you are officially in a replacement situation and you have to follow the procedure.
As soon as that replacement trigger is pulled, your duties as the architect become incredibly specific. You have to follow this 5-step process exactly, making sure your client has every single piece of information they need to make a really sound decision.
But the responsibility doesn't just stop with you. Nope. Once you submit all that paperwork, the insurer has its own checklist. They have to notify the old insurance company and keep all of the records for at least 6 years. It's a built-in system of checks and balances.
60. Remember this number. In a replacement situation, your client gets a 60-day free look period.
This is not the standard 10 or 30 days. It's a much longer period, specifically designed to prevent buyer's remorse on such a big financial move. It gives them 2 full months to change their mind and get a full refund.
All right, let's bring this all home. As the financial architect navigating these 3 major regulations, what are your core duties? What's the final checklist you need to have in your head at all times?
Let's boil it all down to this checklist. First, illustrate clearly. Your blueprints have to be complete and understandable. Second, recommend suitably. Your design must be a perfect fit for your client's needs. Third, disclose fully. Especially during a replacement, all forms need to be completed. And finally, document everything. Keep meticulous records of it all.
Look, at the end of the day, following these rules is about so much more than just avoiding fines. It really forces us to ask a fundamental question. Is my practice built on a solid foundation of compliance that puts my client's best interests first? Or is it really just about the sale? The answer to that question truly defines your career as a financial architect.